Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 22, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee, a city known for its brewing traditions and vibrant culture, was where this dark tale began. The birth of Jeffrey Dahmer was just another ordinary event in a bustling city, but it would later be marked as the beginning of a chilling story. He was the elder of two sons born to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. The Dahmer family appeared to be a typical American family, living in a suburban neighborhood, striving for the American dream. Lionel, a chemist, and Joyce, a teletype machine instructor, provided a stable home environment, or so it seemed. On the surface, Dahmer's childhood seemed ordinary. He played with other children, attended school, and participated in family activities. The Dahmers were part of a close-knit community where everyone knew each other and children roamed freely, exploring their surroundings. However, a closer look reveals troubling signs that hinted at the monster he would become. Behind the facade of normalcy, there were cracks that hinted at deeper issues. Jeffrey was often quiet and reserved, traits that were sometimes mistaken for shyness. Even as a young boy, Dahmer exhibited a disturbing fascination with death. This was not just a passing interest, it was an obsession that grew stronger with time. He would spend hours alone, exploring the woods and fields looking for dead animals. He was intrigued by animal carcasses. The sight of lifeless bodies fascinated him in ways that were deeply unsettling. He would often bring these carcasses home, much to the horror of his parents. Dahmer would often collect roadkill. He would meticulously gather these remains, treating them as if they were treasures. This behavior was more than just a childhood phase. It was a sign of something far more sinister. He would dissect the animals. Using tools he found around the house, Jeffrey would carefully cut open these animals, exploring their insides with a morbid curiosity. This was not a scientific endeavor, but a dark compulsion. This was more than just morbid curiosity. It was an early indication of his fascination with the macabre. His parents, though concerned, did not fully grasp the gravity of his actions. As Dahmer grew older, his interest in death intensified. His teenage years were marked by an increasing withdrawal from social activities. He spent more time alone, lost in his dark thoughts. He became withdrawn and isolated. At school, he was often seen sitting alone, avoiding interactions with his classmates. His teachers noted his lack of participation and his growing detachment from reality. He struggled to connect with his peers. Social interactions were challenging for him, and he often felt like an outsider. This sense of isolation only deepened his fascination with death and control. His social awkwardness further fueled his descent into darkness. The more he withdrew, the more he immersed himself in his macabre fantasies. His mind became a dark place, filled with disturbing thoughts and desires. He found solace in his macabre fantasies. Writing and drawing became his outlets, ways to express the dark thoughts that consumed him. These fantasies were not just harmless daydreams, but the seeds of future horrors. By his early teens, Dahmer was grappling with his sexuality. This added another layer of confusion and distress to his already troubled mind. He struggled to understand his feelings and desires, which only intensified his sense of isolation. He was also battling increasingly disturbing thoughts. These thoughts were not just about death, but about control and domination. He fantasized about having complete power over others, a desire that would later drive his horrific actions. He fantasized about control and domination. These fantasies were vivid and detailed, providing him with a twisted sense of comfort. They were a way for him to escape the reality of his loneliness and confusion. These dark desires would eventually manifest in the most horrific ways imaginable. The seeds of his monstrous actions were sown in these early years, setting the stage for the gruesome crimes that would shock the world. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer is a chilling reminder of how seemingly ordinary beginnings can hide the darkest of secrets. In 1978, Jeffrey Dahmer graduated from Revere High School, a seemingly ordinary milestone for any young adult. However, beneath the surface, his life was anything but ordinary. His parents were in the midst of a tumultuous divorce, a situation that left the family in disarray and young Dahmer feeling increasingly isolated. Dahmer was left alone at their Ohio home, a place that became a breeding ground for his dark thoughts and fantasies. The loneliness and abandonment he felt only fueled his inner demons. It was during this time that his dark fantasies turned into a terrifying reality. The isolation provided him with the perfect environment to act on his disturbing urges. One fateful day, 18-year-old Dahmer encountered Stephen Hicks, a hitchhiker looking for a ride. Hicks had no idea that this seemingly innocent encounter would be his last. Dahmer invited Hicks back to his house under the pretense of sharing a few drinks and hanging out. He offered him a beer, trying to make him feel comfortable and at ease. But the situation quickly turned sinister. Dahmer then bludgeoned Hicks with a dumbbell, a brutal act that marked the beginning of his violent spree. In a horrifying escalation, Dahmer strangled Hicks to death, ensuring that his victim could not escape. He then dismembered the body in his basement, a gruesome task that he carried out with a chilling detachment. Dahmer buried the remains in the woods behind his house, thinking he could hide his crime from the world. This first kill was a turning point in Dahmer's life. It was the moment when his dark fantasies became a horrifying reality. It marked the beginning of a decade-long reign of terror, a period during which Dahmer would go on to commit numerous other heinous acts, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. After his first murder, Dahmer enlisted in the army, perhaps seeking a structured environment to escape his dark urges. He was stationed in Germany, where he hoped the discipline and routine might help him control his impulses. However, his disturbing behavior continued, manifesting in erratic actions and troubling interactions with fellow soldiers. He was discharged in 1981 due to his inability to conform to military standards and his increasing alcohol abuse. Dahmer returned to the United States carrying with him the same dark tendencies that had plagued him before. He drifted between odd jobs, unable to hold down steady employment due to his erratic behavior and worsening alcoholism. He also struggled with alcoholism, which further fueled his violent tendencies and made it difficult for him to maintain any semblance of a normal life. Dahmer's murderous urges resurfaced in 1987, a dark year that marked the beginning of his most violent period. He killed Stephen Tuomi in a Milwaukee hotel room, a crime that would set the stage for his future atrocities. This marked the beginning of an escalating pattern of violence, as Dahmer's methods became more refined and his actions more brutal. Dahmer would go on to kill 15 more victims over the next 5 years, each murder more gruesome than the last. Dahmer's modus operandi became more defined, with a clear pattern emerging in his choice of victims and methods. He often preyed on young men, targeting those who were vulnerable or alone, and luring them with promises of money or companionship. He would lure them back to his apartment, a place that would soon become infamous for the horrors that occurred within its walls. Dahmer would drug them, often with sleeping pills, rendering them unconscious and helpless. He would then strangle them to death, a method he found both efficient and satisfying. Dahmer's crimes became increasingly gruesome as he began to experiment with more macabre and horrifying acts. He would often engage in necrophilia and dismemberment, taking pleasure in the complete domination and destruction of his victims. He would also experiment with cannibalism, consuming parts of his victims in a twisted attempt to feel closer to them. Dahmer's apartment became a gruesome torture chamber, filled with the evidence of his horrific acts and the remains of his victims. Dahmer's apartment at 213 25th Street in Milwaukee became synonymous with horror. The stench of decay permeated the building. Neighbors complained about strange noises. However, Dahmer's reign of terror continued unabated. Inside his apartment, Dahmer kept gruesome trophies of his crimes. He stored body parts in his refrigerator. He had photographs of his victims. Dahmer also experimented with preserving body parts. He wanted to keep souvenirs of his victims. Dahmer's apartment was a testament to his depravity. It was a place where his darkest fantasies became a horrifying reality. Section 5. A Desperate Escape. Tracy Edwards and the Fall of Jeffrey Dahmer. In July 1991, Tracy Edwards, a 32-year-old man, escaped from Dahmer's apartment. Edwards had been lured to Dahmer's apartment. He was drugged and handcuffed. However, Edwards managed to escape. Edwards flagged down 2 Milwaukee police officers. He led them back to Dahmer's apartment. Upon entering the apartment, the officers discovered a scene of unimaginable horror. They found photographs of dismembered bodies. They also discovered human remains in the refrigerator. Dahmer was immediately arrested. The full extent of his crimes was soon revealed. The world was shocked by the gruesome details of Dahmer's crimes. Section 6. Unmasking a Monster: The Trial and Confessions of Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer's trial began in January 1992. He was charged with 15 counts of murder. Dahmer pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His trial became a media sensation. During the trial, Dahmer confessed to his crimes in graphic detail. He described his methods and motivations. He expressed remorse for his actions. However, the prosecution argued that Dahmer was sane at the time of his crimes. They presented evidence of his meticulous planning. They also highlighted his attempts to cover up his crimes. Section 7. Justice served. Dahmer's sentencing and life behind bars. In February 1992, the jury found Dahmer guilty on all 15 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms. Dahmer was spared the death penalty. Wisconsin does not have a death penalty statute. Dahmer was incarcerated at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. He was kept in solitary confinement for his own protection. He was also placed on suicide watch. Section 8. Death in the penitentiary, the end of a killer's reign. In November 1994, Dahmer was murdered by a fellow inmate. He was 34 years old. Dahmer was attacked while cleaning a bathroom. He died from massive head injuries. Dahmer's death brought an end to his reign of terror. However, it did not erase the pain and suffering he inflicted on his victims and their families. Section 9. The aftermath. The enduring legacy of Dahmer's crimes. Dahmer's crimes shocked the world. His case raised questions about how such a monster could exist. It also highlighted the importance of criminal profiling. Dahmer's crimes had a profound impact on the families of his victims. They continue to struggle with their loss. They also seek justice for their loved ones. Section 10. Inside the Mind of a Monster, Psychological Insights and Criminal Profiling. Dahmer's case provided valuable insights into the mind of a serial killer. He was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. He also suffered from necrophilia and cannibalistic desires. Dahmer's case highlighted the importance of criminal profiling. Profiling can help law enforcement identify potential serial killers. It can also help prevent future crimes. Section 11. Lessons learned, the evolution of criminal justice. Dahmer's case also led to changes in the criminal justice system. Law enforcement agencies improved their communication. They also developed better methods for tracking missing persons. Dahmer's case remains a stark reminder of the dark side of human nature. It also serves as a catalyst for improving our understanding of criminal behavior and our responses to it.